You have no idea what I'm capable of.
Hello everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the top custom cards of the week. Starting off, we've got Lazul Fortune Teller, a 6-mana 6/6 priest legendary with Battlecry, discover and cast a tarot card, shuffle the other 6 into your deck. Much like Symphony of Sins, you get offered free of the different tarot cards, which are all these spells that have a different bonus effect attached to them, and you shuffle the one that you didn't choose, or the other ones that you didn't choose, into your deck to then be drawn later and used. The difference here between Symphony of Sins, though, is that the tarot cards each have cast when drawn, so rather than having to spend free more mana on the other tarot cards, you can instead just, when you draw them, their effect happens. Design: 3 stars, balance 1 star. The design of the card is actually very neat. I think it calls back to Lazul's kind of theme and flavor very well, and I like the use of the artwork of Lazul holding the different cards. I think it looks very clean and very nice design-wise. I take off a point just because it is very much like Symphony of Sins. I feel like, this is something we've already explored before, and I take off another point because I actually think the design of the tarot cards really limits the balance of this card a lot, and we'll get into it more when I talk about the balance, but having the tarot cards be cast when drawn effects is very hard to balance around. And I think you did an alright job with the different effects that they have, but it really doesn't work well with the variance of the effects. For instance, the last tarot card, the one that's supposed to kind of balance the other ones, because all the other tarot cards are very powerful. You've got tarot card Disaster, which clears the board, tarot card Betrayal, which takes control of a random enemy minion. All of these are great effects to have alongside a 6-mana 6/6 and potentially just randomly getting them throughout the game. But the one that's supposed to balance those out and have more of a downside is the tarot card of Death, which destroys your own hero on a cast when drawn. And that's just really, I think, a little bit bad design there. Because of it being a shuffle effect, this tarot card in particular could be put on top of your deck, and then it just straight up kills you before you get any of the benefits really from the rest of the tarot cards. You get one strong swing and then the next one you're dead. And that could feel really rough when playing with this card. And I think on the opponent's side, having the more powerful tarot cards like tarot card Betrayal and tarot card Disaster potentially get put on top of your deck can feel really bad for your opponent on the flip side. So I think the design kind of hurts there a little bit. It doesn't encourage the most fun gameplay, and also balance-wise, I think the tarot cards are kind of a little all over the place in their power level. Like, you got the tarot card of Power, which is just deal 8 damage to the enemy hero, and then again the tarot card of Disaster, which clears the whole board. The variance is very strong in this card. I think you can fix it though. What I would recommend is lowering the power level of all the tarot cards. If you want to keep them cast when drawn, I think you got to make them pretty low power level. And then maybe if you want to keep them a little higher and still have that idea that there's the tarot card of Death, which is kind of a downside, I think an interesting design for that one could be cast when drawn, take 10 damage, shuffle this card into your opponent's deck. And so then you have this one tarot card that goes between your opponent's deck and your deck, and you're taking 10 damage each time it's drawn. It kind of calls back to that one priest card that shuffled itself into your opponent's deck. I can't think of what it's called for right now, but it was the deal free damage to all minions, I think. And it shuffled that into your opponent's deck. So it kind of fits in priest. I think that could be kind of cool and a way to kind of shift the balance on this card a bit. But overall, I think the design is very neat. I love Symphony of Sins, and I think it's something that could be explored more. But I think you gotta change some of the numbers around or fix a couple of those problems that I pointed out. Up next, we've got Dastardly Doctor, a free mana 1/4 mech for rogue with miniaturize, poisonous, and magnetic. If for those of you who don't know, miniaturize is the new keyword in the latest expansion announced, Whizbang's Workshop. And it's when you play this, add a 1/1 copy of this minion to your hand. Design 5 stars, balance 5 stars. This is my top card of this week. I love this card so much. I love how the creator of this card made their own artwork for the card as well. I think that's super neat, and it actually looks really good. Like, it's only line work, so there's no coloring or rendering or anything, but I think the concept of the character is very cool, and it looks like what I would imagine the character to look like as well. And they even did the mini version too, which is really neat. Also, I think the balance on this card is pretty much perfect. We had a 2-mana 2/2 with magnetic and poisonous in the past, and this card, I think, fits, modern day free mana. You get a 1/4 out of it, so you have a little bit more of a defensive stat line. And then you also get the 1-mana 1/1 version of this guy, which you can throw on a little mech just to give it poisonous to clear a minion, or in Mech Rogue, you can use it as another magnetic buff and play it alongside all of their magnetic synergies that Rogue has right now. I think it fits in the archetype very well, and it has a lot of different use cases with it having a high health total on the front half, so you could just use it as a health buff, and also really good on its own, I think, too. Just throwing down a free mana 1/4 with poisonous sometimes maybe doesn't feel too bad, and then you get the 1-mana 1 in your hand, so you don't always have to magnetize it on there, which I think is the really neat part of this card. There's a lot of different ways to use it, and all of those ways feel really cool and impactful. So a fantastic job on for the designer of this card, and I love how they used the new keyword in this way. Next up, we've got Moria, Earth Mother, 5-mana free 5 Druid Legendary with Battle Cry, Summon Winter of Death. Now this card summons a dormant minion, much like the Juggernaut of old or Sargeras's Imp Portal, and that dormant card switches between the different seasons at the end of each of your turn and also has their own little effect. For example, Winter of Death has at the end of your turn deal 2 damage to all enemies, and then it swaps to Spring, which restores free health to all friendly characters and summons a 0 free with Taunt, and then it switches to Summer, and then to Autumn, and then it switches to Rebirth, which is it switches into a minion again, which is a free 2 with Rush and Dormant for 1 turn, and then Death Rattle, summon Winter of Death again, so then the cycle begins anew. For this card, design 3 stars, balance 1 star, I think. I take off a couple points of design because I think it's a little strange that you have this minion that summons the seasons, and then it kind of switches into a beast at some point, which then restarts the cycle. I feel like it should almost start with the beast, then go into the cycle, and then end with the beast again, and then just keep looping around instead of having this person that kind of kicks off the chain and then eventually becomes a beast. I don't know. I don't really get the flavor there too well. I like the rest of the flavor of the switching between the seasons. I think that's very thematic for Druid, and I think it being a beast at the end also fits really well. But just that little thing kind of throws me off. Balance-wise, I think some of the seasons are a little too powerful. Winter of Death feels really good, especially for the first season. I would have almost put that one at the end and had it been like the reward for waiting that amount of turns to get there. And the power level between the different seasons definitely varies. So I think the balance is just a little hard to gauge with this card, but I personally feel like it's a little too strong as it is, especially just because how it is currently. You just play a 5-mana free 5 and it kicks off this whole thing, and it infinitely goes pretty much unless your opponent can silence the last guy. But it's going to be hard to silence the last guy because he's also dormant for 1 turn. So it's pretty difficult to interact with this, except for things like Reno, Lone Ranger. So I don't know, I feel like it's just a little too much in the one card with not really much of a cost to it. Moving on, we've got Renaal Greed Prince, which is a free mana, free 4 neutral legendary with your deck size is 40, your starting health is 40, start of game. If this is in both decks, lose 20 health. Design 1 star, balance 1 star. It's another Renaal. I've seen a lot of cards like this. I feel like the design isn't too inspired. It's a little different. It's got this downside if both players have Renaal in their deck. I'm assuming because they wanted to more or less nerf Renaal instead of this being a new Renaal. It's more of a nerfed version of Renaal. But they didn't really present it like that either. So I'm a little confused on the design purpose of this card. But also balance-wise, I feel like this card is really bad for the game. I think having a card that is powerful, that we know, like old Prince Renaal was powerful, but also you don't want both players to be running it in their deck because then it has this major cost. It'll either push the game to where everyone's running this just to make sure that the people running this have the downside, or nobody's running this because nobody wants the downside, which I feel like is just not really that interesting and would be really bad for this game. So, yeah, I'm not a huge fan of this one. I've seen a lot of different Renaal effects like it, but this one, it's different, but I'm not a huge fan. Next, we've got Terrible Gift, a 1-mana legendary neutral spell with get a temporary copy of Millhouse Manastorm, Lorewalker Cho, or Nat Pagal, and then Mana Thirst 10, get all free. Design 0 stars, balance 4 stars, because I wanted to give it the Nat Pagal / Lorewalker Cho stat line in my rating, and that's about it. Moving on. Next up, we've got a custom keyword, Initiate. The Initiate keyword is if this is the first card you played this turn, trigger a bonus effect. The card example that they gave is Strong Armed Brute, a free mana 2/5 pirate with Rush, Battlecry, attack a random enemy minion, and Initiate, gain plus free attack this turn. So if you play this as your first card in a turn, it becomes a free mana 5/5 with Rush and Battlecry, attack a random enemy. And then it loses that free attack at the end of your turn. As for the keyword, I'm going to be rating this more in line with the effect and rather than the card, because they did actually present numerous cards here. This is just the first one that I kind of just picked out. So instead of rating the card, I'm going to rate the keyword. Design-wise on the keyword, I'm going to give it 4 stars. My only potential issue with the keyword is that the design is, I feel like, a little more limited to having the Initiate effect replace a different effect. We see this in some of the other cards that they present, not this one here, but if you have it just be Initiate, here's a bonus, it doesn't really offer too many interesting gameplay opportunities, because then I feel like you could always just play this as the first card. It's not really tough to play a card first in a turn. There's not going to be many situations where you're like, I want to play this card first and then this card. I think this card in particular, you got a little bit of that because it attacks a random enemy minion. Maybe you'd prefer to have this attack into their 4/5, and so you'd want to play a card that kills their 2/2 they have on the board, but you can't do that because then this will lose out on its Initiate bonus. So design for this card, I'm going to give 4 stars and probably a balance of like 3 stars. I'm not entirely too sure. It having Rush and the Battle Cry seems a little too much for me, but not really my main focus here. So I think the keyword is very interesting, and I think some of the cards they made here for the keyword are also interesting. Some of them are a little powerful. If you want to check out the original post, I'll have it linked in the description down below so you can see all of the cards they designed for this keyword. But overall, I think the design for the keyword is like really, really neat. Next up, we've got Demonic Charge, a 1-mana fell spell for Demon Hunter with destroy a minion with less attack than your hero. Design 4 stars, balance 5 stars. My only small little thing with this card is that we actually haven't seen any Demon Hunter single target removal. I think it's not really strength of Demon Hunter is their removal, like specifically in the single target territory, but I think this card does it really well. It focuses more on Demon Hunters giving themselves a lot of attack in a turn, which is definitely a strength of Demon Hunter. And it's, you know, a situational removal, which I think classes that don't generally get removal can get on occasion. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. Balance for this card, I feel like it's fine. Seems in line with like Shield Slam and Execute of old. So yeah, I think this card is pretty good, pretty well designed, and pretty balanced. And here we've got another new keyword of sorts. It's more of a remixed version of the miniaturized keyword. We've got Megaturize, which is get a 10/10 copy of this that costs 10 when you play the first half of it. The example they gave is Toy Drake, a 1-mana 1/1 mech dragon with Megaturize, Rush, and Taunt. So when you play this, you'll get a 10-mana 10/10 version of this Toy Drake with Rush and Taunt. Overall, I think for this keyword, I'd give the design 4 stars, and the balance of the card, I'd give 5 stars. I think the card is fine. It's probably a little too weak, but my one problem with the design of the card, and more of the keyword, is that I don't feel like there's much design space for Megaturize. Miniaturize, definitely, getting a 1/1 copy of a card offers a lot of interesting design opportunities. You definitely like to have a 1-mana version of their effects in your hand. I don't think there's many situations where you want a 10-mana version of a card's effect in your hand. This one works because it has Rush and Taunt, so you get this big Taunt minion that also can clear a minion as well. But overall, I think it's an interesting idea, and I don't know how much design opportunity there is there, though. Coming up, though, now we've got Golf Wong and Zawmart, a 6-mana 6/6 legendary neutral beast with Finale. Your next Finale triggers twice if this is the last card in your hand, and 4 times if your deck is also empty. Design 1 star, balance 1 star. I don't get this card too much at all. The design on this card is very strange. I don't get what the character has to do with anything, and having it be a Finale effect is kind of strange as well when you consider the if this is the last card in your hand and deck. Because obviously, if this is the last card you're playing, and your hand is empty and your deck is empty, then you don't have another Finale card to play, so you don't have another Finale to trigger 4 times. So the design is very weird there. And then balance-wise, I feel like this card is pretty much unplayable, even if you ignore that aspect of the card, even like have it just be Finale, your next Finale triggers twice. I think that's really bad. And then Frice, if this is the last card in your hand, that's pretty bad, because now you got to draw another Finale card. And then again, the 4 times one just doesn't really make too much sense. See, I don't really understand this card at all. I think it would need some major reworks to get it to a playable state, and also a state that kind of makes sense. Lastly, we've got, of course, a funny pun that made it up to the top. We've got Bony Hawk, a 2-mana 2/2 legendary undead for Death Knight with Rush and Battlecry. Choose your trick. The different tricks are gain Reborn, gain Death Rattle, deal 1 damage to all enemies, or gain free corpses. Design 4 stars, balance 5 stars, I think. Neat little card for slower Death Knight decks, probably, or maybe even Unholy Death Knight, get a lot of corpses. My one issue with the card is the last option, gain free corpses, feels a little redundant. I feel like you'd always choose the Reborn one over that, because Bony Hawk, when he dies, is going to get you a corpse, and then when he reborns and dies, he's going to get you another corpse. So you get 2 corpses out of Bony Hawk with the Reborn option, and then you get 4 if you count Bony Hawk dying when you choose the gain free corpses option. So I feel like there's not too much of a difference between those two. I would have maybe changed the gain free corpses one to something a little more interesting, maybe like draw a card or something. I don't know. But other than that, I think all of the different options are very interesting. They allow you to choose kind of your board clear depending on the board state of the game currently. So if there's like 2 2/2s on the board, you probably want the Reborn option. But if there's a bunch of 1/1s on the board, you're going to want the deal 1 damage to all enemy minions option. but they all have their different uses of the first two at least. Yeah, very interesting card. I can see why it made it to the top. Funny pun. That's what we have come to expect here at this point. If it is a funny pun, it is going to be somewhere near the top custom cards of the week. But with that, we have concluded our review of these last 10 cards posted on the r/custom Hearthstone subreddit. Again, if you have any cards that you too would like me to take a look at, go ahead and check out the subreddit and post your own cards, upvote other people's cards, leave your feedback, do all that amazing stuff. Also, if you enjoy this series, be sure to leave a like on the video and also subscribe, because I'll be posting one of these each week. So yeah, that's about it. Hope to see you all again very soon.